Hi and welcome. This is Waking Up with Plans, and you're listening to the message from Roos for this time in May, especially with the full moon coming up, but valid anytime you listen to this. So Roos speaks to us about the alchemy of the heart. So we're going into our heart space with this message. They speak about coming back to living through the senses, to wake up in a sensual world and letting our bodily fluids flow. Stagnant waters start to smell and acids pile up, so they invite us to crease our joints with a sensual life. They ask us, do we dare live again with our hearts wide open, amongst everything, including everything? Really like, Shiva, transmuting darkness with the light that our heart presence brings. And choosing and allowing ourselves to receive love and goodness, to allow it to be gifted to us. Amongst everything that is happening in this world, to be loyal to life and not get stuck or hung up on the darkness or the difficulties. So the energetics of this time, as Rose shows it to me, is that the heart energy of this planet, of our Earth, is increasing. So the iron crystal core of the Earth, which is our heart, pulses, like these vibrant heart pulses that radiate out from her center towards the surface and into the atmosphere. We receive this pulse. We spoke in Clover's message also how we are with our bodies part of the membrane of Earth's body. So this very much informs us. This rising of this heart energy affects the way we feel, and you might experience in this time winds of change, things not working as they used to in your life in the old ways. It might feel more chaotic or more irregular or more disruptive, maybe even. And what Rose shares about this is they show themselves with their flower as seated in our heart space, and with a king and queen sitting beside each other, both forming leadership over your life. But we are not used to the feminine energies and the masculine energies, one being not distorted, but also we don't experience it in a global way as being equal, in an equilibrium together. But these pulses that Rose shows coming from Earth's heart, the core of the Earth, very much holds this coding. So this is inviting us to make up the balance, and this is what you will notice maybe also in your life, like what is whether your logic, your left brain is supporting your right brain, your intuitive side, and whether your intuitive side asks support of your rational thinking. So how is that for you? It's valuable to look at how these two qualities are working together, or maybe not working together, overruling each other maybe. And this time really has a lot of potency, a lot of wind in our backs. There's a lot of fertility around embracing more of our feminine qualities into our leadership, how we lead our lives. They show like your heart is the captain on the ship, and it's both this king and this queen steering. So How much in your life do you follow your intuition? And Rose wants to speak a bit about this, what they point towards with this intuition. And this is about what they refer to as the language of life. The left side of your body represents more of your feminine side. The right side of your body represents more of your masculine side. But with the brain halves, this is the other way around. And where the left side, so the sort of more masculine quality of your brain, is the expert of logical linear thinking, rational thinking, the right side is the expert of intuition or imagery. And this is what Rose is pointing towards, the invitation, but also the urgency to read life from this side. We know this language, this imagery type of language, archetypal type of language, from our dream state. In our dreams, there is a language highly based on imagery, but not purely images. It's a very sensory language happening in your dreams that's not necessarily logical. You can be in one place and then a second later in a totally different place. Different types of people may jump in, may jump out, may shapeshift, and where that can seem random, Rose is really speaking to that this language is not random, is very meaningful. We're only not so trained to read this kind of language. And we're also not familiar with the fact that our right brain is sending out these images also during daytime. It happens continuously. So whatever you come across in your days, your heart is reading the information, is reading all the sensory input. The wisdom of our heart knows the truth about the information, and the images that your right brain sends out will reflect this truth. So whatever you come across, for example, a decision you have to make, and something may look attractive and sound just sensible to do, but your intuition might give you a really different view on this. So here you maybe can feel into why it's important to tap into this. Also with all the stories we come across, with all the people we meet, what's the real information? What's the deeper, the underlying information that's being transmitted here? And although, this imagery can be really like a second screen that we develop during the day, what Rose points out is that even though if you're not connected to the stream of imagery, you can look at your life, your physical life, and see what images, what archetypal language is going on there. They really point out that everything has meaning. Nothing is random. A cup that breaks on the floor tells you something. The timing of a letter falling on your doorstep tells you something. Every event in your life, and like in a dream, some things feel more significant, might have more of a symbolic energy feel to them, or mythic atmosphere around them than others, but it's happening continuously. So start there in your life. Rose invites you to especially think from the period from beginning of May until now. So the beginning of May, the 1st of May, time of Beltane, this ancient feast of fertility, the fertility to conceive life. So they give you this theme as an entryway. How fertile do you feel this time? how fertile to conceive new life. How open to new things to come into your life, being manifested. And they also show about physical fertility. And I've seen this as well with the people I work with, that there has been quite a drop of fertility. Roos shows this as sort of a drying up of bodily fluids, like the waters, the creation waters. So it's our blood, but also our cerebral spinal fluid, and all fluids in our body just becoming more stagnant. And like with any water that becomes stagnant, it begins to smell and becomes to become more toxic. So, and why is this? Why is this drop of fertility amongst not only humanity, by the way? It is because a loss of sensuality. And the loss of sensuality is basically because of an absence in the body. You can imagine if you're not home in your house, in your body, you can't see what's going on there. And it's like when you drop into your body, for example, by focusing more on your sensory intake and taking care of your sensory intake. This really helps with dropping in. It's sort of that your spirit, your consciousness and your body click. And this click needs to happen. Your spirit needs to be embedded at home in the cells for these bodily fluids to start circulating properly and start creasing the joints. And well, there's a lot of health issues as well to do with this. For example, the drop of fertility that many couples suffer from. So Roos not only asks you to look at how fertile you feel in your life, what you say is your potency to conceive new things coming into your life, goodness coming into your life, that opens your heart. And the other inquiry that they suggest is this question of what is your sensory intake? What's your sensory diet like? What senses do you stimulate and how much? What's the refinement level? They show me like a measurement stick, like how much senses do you, one, think you have? And two, what do you think is the maximum capacity of each of those senses? If you look at your hearing, your tasting, smelling, touching, seeing, at what capacity do you feel that you operate right now? Roos really speaks about this, like with the drivers of our car. They say it's valuable to contemplate these questions because your beliefs around these questions affect how you nourish and train your senses. And this has a great effect on the pixelation level with which you experience your life. But it also has a great effect on how you turn on your bodily functions, and so how your bodily fluids flow and support and nourish the life within you. They really show to me like how much you absorb, devour all the sensory input that's out there. And this conscious absorbing is the nourishment for your cells and your body functions, and makes the grounds, the soil of your life fertile. It's mostly when we experience that our life becomes flat, or you could also say lose fertility, that there usually is a decline of use of the senses. And as they say, this world speaks this multisensory language to us. It's important to nourish our senses. It was very touching that as I went out on sort of the medicine walk to collect images for this episode on YouTube, that frogs started showing up. There was one pair of frogs, a male and a female, that were mating, and they were very aware that I was there, and they sat in the middle of a little path, and they really wanted me to record that from very close. It was really touching intimate that they let me be present with that. It's also pointing out that it's really this union and this collaboration between the masculine energies within us, the ability to structure our days, to see patterning, but also the free energy. And it's really the heart, the intellect, the wisdom of the heart to make sense and to navigate in the sea of information. The heart doesn't have to cling on to structures for stability, like routines in your day, but also paradigms. And at the same time, it also doesn't get lost into a sea of chaos and just drifts. It's this most incredible search engine, so it's important to activate it and to, like Clover spoke about the field of creation, what they call the meadow. So every one of us carries our creation field around us, and it literally informs our physicality and all of our body functions. And now Roos shows the heart as the conductor or imprinter of this field. The state of your conscious heart connection is the state of your leadership over your life. Many great scientists prove a lot of this, is that the heart actually is the captain on our ship. So the heart sends out the coordinates for all of your body functions to align, so they give beat and rhythm that harmonize all the processes that go on. So this would be also a great collective capacity to have in our world today, wouldn't it? And the way you can contribute to this is by tending to your own heart. So what do you set your heart's coordinates to? What do you steer towards? When you engage with the internet, you have to type in something in the search engine. We'll refer to this as an intention. It may be a question that you want insights around. It may be something that you want to manifest in your life, something your heart longs for. So we're talking a bit in circles here. And this is really the energy of Roos. They work in a very feminine, non-linear manner. So bear with me. Just breathe into your heart and hang in there. Roos wants to speak a bit more about our heart's longings, because this is really the specialist terrain of Roos. And they show me their message for us as this rose bud, this flower head that unfolds, opens petal by petal by petal. And we spoke about this, that the earth is also supporting us in this movement to open our hearts again. And it will become increasingly more hard not to do this, to get parts of our heart that have become compromised, to keep them shut. We're really invited to go there. So they want to speak a bit about your longing. Do you know what your heart longs for? This in itself can be a great way to connect or to activate your heart, to walk with this question. What does my heart long for? And to give it some time and space and see what pops up in your days, in the language that life gives you that feels connected to this. Roos shares about this, staying present with your longings, just being a multi-sensory witness of them is a very alchemistic practice. Not to want to fulfill your longings, to look for satisfaction, just the act of staying present with the longing, becoming an explorer of all its colors, all its tastes, all the angles, all the textures, the tones. Let your imagination play with this. Roos says your collective is largely fueled by addictions, the drive for instant gratifications. And take a look at all your daily behaviors that are compulsory, that have attachments to them. I'm not okay if I haven't had my coffee, my kiss, my shower, my gym, whatever. And they ask, as a thought experiment, how many fixes need to be taken out of your life for you to feel destabilized? It's an interesting one. I think they once did this experiment for a collective to destabilize. It's just to go mad, basically. It's not that many things that need to crumble before we all lose it, basically. Roos goes on to say, you see, there is a need in your life for structure, but too much destabilization leads to chaos and disruption. You need to find some orientation, for example, through the routines in your life. Too much leads to overpowering, to suffocation of life flow. It's the drive to control life, to overmanage, out of fear for danger or for discomfort even. The amount of energy that is put into holding on to the status quo, to comfort in your collective, is out of control. It's taken out all of the life renewal. It's the fear for the fear. This is why disruption can be a very vitalizing function as well. They show me their thorn cutting through skin, creating a wound, so that you see blood, red blood, breaking open life flow. To disrupt the hypnotized fear state, living life like a repetitive dream, forgetting that you are the dreamer dreaming this dream, or the writer of your own living myth. You will see in these times examples of how disruption can cause growth. If it is too much, it can traumatize as well, but Roos points out that we hold on so much to the fear side of this that we forget the emergent life that it can activate. Anyone that pruned a bush can tell you this. It stimulates growth. Roos reminded me as well of this movie Chocolate, and they went with this very human association that we link also roses a lot of the time with chocolate, right? I think all having to do with sensuality. And the medicine of cacao is also a great heart opener. Anyway, this is a theme in the movie Chocolate, and it's about a female chocolatier that with her daughter comes in this little French town that's built on tranquilité, so tranquility, but too much, blindly holding on to stagnant dogmas in the hope of safety. It's very understandable, but it can be very dangerous as well, Roos says, to hold on to that too much. So in the movie you see, like in a lot of tales, that disruptions can cause growth and break open life. So maybe that offers you a different perspective to the thorns in your life, Roos says. See what life they break open. and wake you up from your own tranquilité. It's taking a look at your coping mechanisms to keep your status quo. Roos shows this again, we're weaving back and forth between masculine and feminine energies, but there's this, in a distorted way, we have this leaning back, like this too much tranquility, and leaning forward, like this compulsory fulfillment of our senses, this constant stimulation that really numb the senses. Rose suggests really to go into rehab with our senses, to detox from any daily addictions by detoxing from daily compulsory behaviors or addictions. Just giving your senses too little stimulation, but also the overstimulation of the senses, is a form of abuse. Your body is organic life, and not taking care of your body is imprinting your field with a low value for life. So this really all starts with self-love and the love for our bodies. We can look around us to see this value reflected in our world. The language of life doesn't lie, does it? And when you dare to let your life fall still, Rose says you will start to see that your senses open up naturally, but in a much more refined kind of way. Life energy is, by its very nature, sensual and emergent, and your senses are designed to attune to this. You just need to trust that life is holding you, and the flow of life will bring goodness to you. If we want to experience that we're actually bathing in this life energy that really wants the best for us, we have to let go of control. And this is for our collective a very hard thing to do, because we haven't known that for a very long time. In the plant session of Rose, I will link it below if you're interested. It's a deep medicine journey with the consciousness of Rose. They really bathe you in this energy, and they also bathe you, they show it as taking a bath in rose water, also as a aromatherapy. They work a lot in this session with their fragrance. And although, this is an energy transmission, the information of their fragrance really is there and informs you. And what it activates, they show it now, especially in our hearts. Smell is connected to deep parts of our memory. And I know there's places in our brain, but they also show like places in our heart that hold very old memory. And it's not only connected to a soul's memory, they also show how, our bodies are thousands of years old. It's not just your lifetime of information that you live in. It's your body's been passed down for thousands of years, and the history of the whole of humankind is stored within our bodies. It's amazing. So we can tap into that. And what Rose does in this session, which is really profound, is they connect you with the memory that's stored within your heart that humanity has lived before the great cataclysms, the great floods, that humanity has this memory of living without trauma. And in this time where humanity wasn't traumatized yet, we lived in much more of this surrendered state and much more trust with the earth, with all life that surrounded us. And this can really, really support us right now to live through this time where disruptions also might occur, but not to be so scared of them, but actually for this memory to rise up, to birth it again now in this time. So let's see, where are we? I might split this message in two, because there's so much more they want to speak about. It just keeps expanding. Well, I will bring this last piece for this episode from Roos for you. They say, come home to your body, because you can't experience life, the goodness of life, if you're not home, if you're not in your vessel. There's so much more for your soul that you can embody, that you can embed in your cells. It will clear out the density, and yes, that might feel uncomfortable, but the price is sweet and fragrant. You will alchemize it into the nectar of life. You will stop to smell the roses that appear on your path. Your life will synchronize with the bigger body of life, and the language of life will speak louder to you. The synchronicities will grow. Your creativity for living will grow. Ideas and inspiration will get more juicy because now you flow with life. Okie doke, I will stop here. Thank you for checking in. I hope this was heart-opening for you, and that it got your juices flowing, that you picked up on the storylines that were relevant for you in this wild ride. And I will connect with you next time. Until then.